Hey, honey, you know that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger?
Yes.
Well, our guests today, Bobby and Michelle Schaffer, can definitely talk to us about that. Because early in their marriage, they lost not just one, but two businesses, and in dramatic fashion.
Oh my gosh, like one isn't bad enough, and usually people don't recover and want to start another one.
Yeah, and not just that, but a lot of times that will do in a marriage.
Exactly.
And so being able to rally together and build another one that's even more successful than the other two, and just learn how to just work better together. I think that was one of the key learning points early on in their marriage and working together.
And she also contributes, I think, a lot to him mentoring her, especially when they were married, when they were younger in their marriage.
Yeah, so they'll definitely share with us some insights, and not just how to work together, but really what's the basis of that is really how to honor each other in their strengths. Because, as you know, we opposites attract, and so definitely Bobby and Michelle are definitely opposites, and that can also create a lot of conflict. And so how to really leverage each other's strengths, not let our differences become conflicts, but make it just really the basis of creating a strong team so you can create a strong business.
Well, and I think, too, learning how to let go of control, because if you're like me, you want to control every little thing, but there's no creativity in that, and then you're not allowing your spouse to be who they are.
Yeah, or not refrain from blaming each other for the failures.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure there could have been some finger pointing going around when you lost the first business and definitely the second one. So, how do you make sure moving forward into the third business that, those kind of conversations don't come up, that finger pointing stuff?
Yeah. How do you recover from two businesses failing and keep your marriage intact?
Yeah. So got a lot of questions. So you ready to talk about
I'm ready.
Michelle?
I'm all excited.
All right. Well, let's let them in. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, well, here we are with Bobby and Michelle. Thank you for saying yes to us.
Yes, we're so excited to have them.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah.
We're pumped.
Absolutely.
And I know Michelle's used to doing podcasts. She's got her own successful podcast for years. Bobby, as we said, they said earlier, is the reluctant podcaster or to come on. So we're, number one, honored that you said yes to us as well.
Yes.
So thanks, Bobby, for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And we're going to have fun. And so let's get right into it.
Well, honey, he can give us all the dirt on Michelle too.
I know, that's why we want.
And there's a lot.
That's why I want the spouse to always come on.
Yeah, I know, huh?
There's actually probably there's way more dirt on me than him.
I don't know about that, but yes, that's funny. It's
so
funny.
far, as I was getting ready for this, all the dirt that's out there, Michelle, is really positive. So,
Good.
at least online. So we get to hear the other side. But, your story, and you're public about this, but, you've both been working together for a lot of years now as husband and wife, having multiple businesses together. You're successful now in all forms and fashion and all measures, both financially, spiritually, relationally. But in the beginning, you went to a series of losing two Was that
She
Are you
sounds-
surprised?
He sounds perfect. Thank
He's
you.
saying we. That was about we, us.
It doesn't mean you have it all together, right? But
Yeah,
it
it
means you have a
sounded just
rich
like
life.
a storybook. Yeah.
Should we just leave it like that then? Yeah.
Yeah, leave it right there. And thank you for listening. And
Yeah,
we'll see you
thanks
next
for listening. There we go. Tune in next week, right? But from the business aspect, I know you've faced some challenges in the beginning. You both had started two businesses together, and they've failed for one reason or another. One taken right out from underneath you. And so I've seen the stories of how you've overcame and really relied on your faith and God to do this. But I know we're talking about husband and wife. You know, when stresses like this happen, I mean, these are some big issues, right? Going through these losses of business. How did the two of you, what are some things that came out of it? Like, I'm sure there were some challenges, like even relationally, you know, how do you deal with these things? And you both are looking at these things differently. And what are some of the challenges you had to overcome just with the two of you and getting through those periods?
I just think that I would hope that people aren't expecting that marriage, in any aspect, whether they're both working jobs, whether one has a business, one works a job, whether they both work in business together, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to go perfectly. And I think just we weren't in our 20s or even 30s, you know, we were older. So we understood that right out the gate. And I think we both give each other grace and knowing that things aren't going to be perfect. And we don't just go crazy when things don't go perfect. We don't get mad at each other for it. You know, and I'll speak for myself, if she has an idea or something that she feels she wants to implement to help things get better, I respect that. You know, if I absolutely don't agree with it, she'll tell me that I don't agree with it. You know, she'll make sure that I know that she doesn't think I agree with it. But with that said, I you know, again, grace and knowing that we know that we're different and that we think differently, and we allow grace for that, and we accept that, and we just work with that to make things better. And we both say what we think and what we feel and what we want to see happen, and it always works out. One of us is right that day or that week or that month, and we flow with that. So
That's a powerful thing that he just said. One of us is right. That's
sometimes both, sometimes neither.
Yeah, but more often than not, in any scenario, like one of you is going to be closer to the right answer. That's a powerful thing. And in a young marriage, you think you're the right one. But I think as you get older, you realize like it might not be me, but at least one of us, like we have a better shot because there's two ideas versus one. I was in my 30s when we lost that company.
Oh, rub that in.
So you weren't. I was in my 30s.
You're the older man, Bobby, apparently.
And I will tell you, that was my first shot into kind of bigger business ownership. He had owned other businesses before me that I wasn't even with him. I wasn't a part of them. When he owned the mortgage company, I wasn't a part of that at all, even though we were married. And when we owned our network marketing company in 2010, that was the first traditional, I mean, I guess you would call that a traditional business, even though it was network marketing, because it was a brick and mortar. We had a building and, you know, traditional things. That was my first round into that. And I felt so excited, like all the things up to my life, you know, this long life into your 30s, all the things to my life to that point had led to this moment. And this was what it was all for. So losing that was devastating beyond I couldn't even comprehend how devastating that was. And I was depressed. I felt lost, afraid, embarrassed. Bobby was rock solid. He was immediately, and you know, we don't have to go into the story, but we were in another state with the investors when it happened. So we were flying home the same day, like had this meeting. We're done with you. You guys are out. We were flying home. In the airport, Bobby was already working on what was next for us. And I was like, I felt like I was in a stupor. I barely remember being in the airport. I barely remember the day. It felt very traumatic what happened. And he was already moving forward. Like, okay, let's, what's the next for us? So he was a rock for me, for our family. And just like, And I know he was mad. And I think that, like that's a better emotion to have as an entrepreneur than depressed is. So I'm glad we both weren't depressed. He went immediately. He was like, screw you guys, we're moving forward and we're getting out of this. And I was just falling apart. And he went straight to, that was a bad move on your part. It's like it's like the movie Pretty Woman when she goes into the shop to spend money and they wouldn't let her. She comes back with all the bags. She's all, bad move, bad move. That's how he was that day. He was like, bad move on their part. So he was, we had two completely different responses. He had much more experience in traditional business than I had. So I think he had more grit and totally different personality anyway. So he just went forward. And that was a very, very powerful example for me.
That's great. So how did you react to that, Michelle? Because as we're just talking about two different ways of dealing with it, and this happens with every marriage, how you deal with stress. And then sometimes when one's just going to say, like, okay, let's move forward, right? Let's pick ourselves up and let's move forward. But then the other one is, feeling those other emotions. A lot of times, sometimes there's, I don't want to say resentment, but sometimes like, hey, I'm not ready to move forward yet. I got this, I got all this thing where you're just ready to just ride on his coattails and move forward, help him pull you along through this thing, or
were you digging in your heels?
There's some things where like, hey, you know what? I need a little time here to process this.
No, I definitely wasn't digging in my heels. I was very, very happy to follow his lead on the decision. It was a mutual decision. We had a couple different directions that we could go, and being that we are both entrepreneurs, we have a similar mindset in that we create our future. Nobody else creates it. We create our future. We make the decisions for us, and other people aren't going to make them. So I was glad that he went into action immediately to create new opportunities for us to make decisions. And I was not kicking. I trust him like explicitly where, we've been together now 23 years. And I would say for the first at least decade, he was a mentor to me. So I listened to him. I learned from him in tremendous ways. And then once I felt, he's still mentoring me in a lot of ways, but once I felt like we were more, he wasn't as much mentoring me and we were more partners, it became this, I have very much respect for him. I think he has respect for me, and we have respect for the fact that we think and see things different. Where in the beginning of our relationship, I hated that. I wanted him to see things my way. I wanted him to think my way. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't like the ways that he thought because I felt like they were rubbing against me in the wrong way. But as we've been together as long as we have, I am so happy that he is the way that he is and thinks the way that he is, because it's completely complementary to the ways that I am, because they fill in gaps of things that I don't have and see and even understand. So now as we move forward with things where in the past I'd be like, I don't even want to ask him because I don't want to hear what he has to say because it's going to be so different than what I'm thinking. Now I ask him wanting that difference. So, at that time we had been together just over 10 years. So we were in a completely different spot in our marriage than we are now, having gone through so many things. But he just really took the lead and led us into something new. And I just, it was a terrible time, but I look back and like so many great things came from that personally, like so much personal development, so much knowledge. I really feel like that experience for me, and I won't speak for you, it really changed me in a lot of really profound ways.
Yeah, it sounds like that was maybe sometimes you need to go through those really challenging moments, go through the fire to really start to appreciate each other's differences, right? And I don't know if that was a defining moment or sometimes lower, but how did you get to this point to really appreciate the differences? Because this is common, right? In most marriages about our differences, we're complementing each other's, weaknesses basically. But a lot of times our differences become conflicts as opposed to making it complementary. And so you guys are very complementary right now, but was there like an aha moment, or was just through time that you've started to really appreciate differences of opinion?
I just think personally, that comes with experience, age, things that go on in your life. And she did mention, I don't know if this answers your question, but she mentioned that she didn't want to hear my opinion or my thoughts on something because she already knew what I was going to say. And that, for the most part, that is true. A lot of times, you get to know your spouse so well that you start to know what their answer is going to be, so you don't ask. But what I would say to anybody listening that maybe is there or is just getting started with their new spouse, always listen, because as you get older and go through different experiences, you change a little bit. You start to think differently. You have different opinions on things. You have more experienced, older opinions on things. And so if they're thinking, well, 10 years ago, he or she would have said that may not be what they're going to say now, 10, 15, 20 years later. It could be a complete different answer, and it might just be what they want to hear. We always want to get answers that we want to hear, but it's impossible. So I'm sorry, that probably did not answer your question, but that was just what my thoughts were at the moment.
No, that's good.
I was gonna say something about that. We've been lucky that we've worked together, so we've been able to grow together.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of couples, like, you have your job, you have your career, and they're separate. You have your career friends, your job things. But because we've worked together, we have had shared experiences. We've had growth at the same times, or at least been in the same spaces to hear the same information. So we were growing together. I think that there were a couple of, maybe not necessarily aha moments, but aha seasons. There was something for me years and years ago that a very not an important comment to him. He was just speaking. He said something to me that made me feel very, 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 very bad about our roles in business, and like I was maybe doing something to harm him. He made this very he wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. We were just talking. It was a very casual comment about me kind of taking over in a conversation, or me overtaking. I can't remember the exact.
Bulldozing?
No, he didn't say bulldozing. He said, think about the.
I do remember that comment.
Well, that's because that's my nature. That's me. But I move fast and break things. That's not
I like her to bulldoze now. She can just take over. I don't care.
But it was something about, it was the word.
Honey, go take care of that. Yeah, go bulldoze that.
He used the word overshadow. And I was crushed because
I don't remember that one.
Because you weren't saying it like he was just, it was just like a passing thought that he had. So I'm not surprised you don't remember. But it stuck with it crushed my soul, because here's this person that I adore. And I felt so bad that he felt like I was maybe intentionally or something. And so that made me change from that moment on the ways that I behaved in business. And I was very intentional about making sure that I was always creating a space for him to be upfront and shine and do all the things, because that's who he really is. That's who he was in my life. And years later, I don't know if you have to remember this. I hope to God you remember this.
I'm a man, so we don't
Did you change your hair color?
Yeah. I don't remember what happened this morning, let alone years ago.
Hopefully you remember this. We had only one child left at home, which is Savannah, our daughter, who's gone now. And she worked at our church every Sunday. So she worked in the coffee shop. So she would leave and we would go to church after. But on this one Sunday, he goes, instead of going to church, can I take you out to breakfast? I want to talk to you. And I was like, are we getting divorced this long later? That's kind of weird. Like, you want to go out to breakfast and talk to me. So men don't talk. Never happened. Like, that is not a thing that happened ever. Right. So I was like, okay.
I just didn't want to go to church that day.
She's thinking divorce.
I'm just kidding.
That's not something that he did. Like, can we go out and talk? So I was like, he had something on his mind. And because we're together every day, you know what I mean? It's not like we need to go to a place to talk. We're literally together all day, every day. So, and when we went out to breakfast, do you remember that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he basically, it'll make me cry. He basically said that he felt like I was holding back, and that he basically gave me permission, like, fully be who you are.
Well, I would say that, is it Kay or Kaylee? I'm looking at your name on the screen.
Kaylee.
Kaylee, I'm sorry. Kaylee, you know who she is if you're on any of her calls or or you feel her, you see her, and I live here with her, so I certainly do feel that way, and wanted her to know to go be all who you are and can be, because you're going to change lives. And I didn't want me as a man, this overpowering, I'm 6'3", 225-pound man. I don't want to overpower and you're doing this and this and that. I know men like that. And there's just no way. She is so powerful, and 10 times more powerful than I am in so many ways. So I just wanted her to know to go open the floodgates, and she certainly has done that.
Well, and I just think that's...
It wasn't like we had this conversation before then. Like there was never, I never told him how I felt after he made that comment. We never had a conversation about it. So these were two pivotal things for me personally.
I just think that was so, you're empowering her. It was so powerful that you said that to her, Bobby, because a lot of times, I don't know if Michelle had that kind of relationship with her dad where she had that kind of encouragement. I certainly did not. But I just think it's so great. I remember having the conversation with Robert one time. I'm like, honey, because I was raised, when you're a little girl, you just be quiet. You just look pretty. You don't say anything. You don't speak up. You don't ask questions. And so I remember, I don't even know why I asked you this, but one day I said, honey, are you okay if I make more money than you? And what'd you say?
Heck yeah, I'll go golf.
Some guys are not.
I could be a kept man. I don't care. I don't have that much pride.
Some husbands are not okay with that. You know what I mean? They want to be, and that was totally not my personality. I don't even know why I asked you that, because I like to be behind the scenes. So.
Yeah. Well, for your listeners, I would just say, look, I don't know. We'll have to ask God when we get to heaven someday, but when women were made with so much more grit, so much more capability to do everything all at once, physically, mentally, in their hearts, just everything they do is just so much. So for you young married couples listening to this, watching this, just know that your wife is so much more than you could ever imagine. All the things women do, just to bake a little baby in that oven there that alone is a miracle.
Yeah.
They can do so much. So be open to that.
And that's good. And that was such a powerful example, what you're sharing, Michelle and Bobby. And because I remember when Kaylee, we're talking about differences of opinions and, can clash, and how do you get to the point where you start to appreciate each other's differences and their opinions. And I remember, we're having this one disagreement years ago, and I was, I guess, holding my ground. And then Kaylee let her know her opinion. And at the end, she says, it's up to you, because I know you'll make the best decision for us. And that word us hit me with a ton of bricks. I was like, when she said that, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not making this opinion for me. And obviously this issue does not affect just me, but I was making it about me. And that word right there, two things that did for me was, one, she really showed me how much she honored me and my opinion, but then also, and then showed that she knew she could trust me. And as soon as she did that, I was like, oh, I got to look at this thing different. Right? Instead of looking at it through my eyes, I got to look at it from our eyes. And so that's powerful, those powerful moments. But Bobby, I want to ask you this, because as Michelle was sharing these two things that happened, it almost seems conflicting. So I want you to kind of unpack this a little bit. I don't know if you can, but first it was she said that she remembered the comment that you said she overshadowed you. She was overshadowing you. And then you came back and you had this discussion and said, go be all you can be, just be who you are. Mm-hmm. And so it almost seems like conflicting, like, oh, when maybe Michelle was before, and then you feel overshadowed, but now you're coming back and saying, so I'm not sure, what was the differences in those two situations?
Well, it's exactly what I said. It's just youth compared to, as you get older, get more experience, and can appreciate your spouse more and more as you grow together, and that us factor being involved. When you talked about, women are supposed to be quiet and, sit over there and be, you know what I mean? You made mention to that. Our age, and I don't know how old you two are, but at my age, I should say, that's how we were raised. And our parents certainly were raised like that. And times have definitely changed. And again, it's just experience, Robert, just watching her grow, watching her, what she can do, and knowing that, hey, I need to be quiet on this one because she's good at that, better than me. And we'll get, as business owners, you do think about the bottom line a lot. You think about the earning part of it, because you have to put food on the table. And if you see that your spouse, male or female, if you see that your spouse is better than you, let them go. Let them do that, whatever that is. Can I mention one thing also? Sure. You talk about the us. It could be your next book, The Us Factor, something like that. But it's so true.
Write that down. Hold on.
Write it down. Author Robert and Kaylee. You talk about couples now, more than ever, they have to work separately. One spouse goes to work on this direction, the other goes in that direction. They may or may not have kids. Either way, everybody's in a different place every single day, all day. They know the people at their jobs better than they know themselves and their relationships. They have almost better relationships at work sometimes. Hopefully not, sadly, but a lot of times they do. And they really grow with them instead of with their spouse. And, she mentioned that we've worked together most of the years we've been married. That is true. So we've been able to grow together and understand each other better as we grew and as we got older, as we got more experience. And we know how to deal with situations. Not a whole lot of arguments in this house anymore. When we were younger, sure, plenty of them, but not as many anymore. Now it's just like, okay, now you're just being stubborn. You just want to argue, right? And that's kind of how it is now, because we can very easily veer off in the direction of not arguing.
That's directed toward me, FYI.
We know how to not argue. Let's just say that we know we know each other. So let me just go back in the 1800s and before that, when there wasn't all this what we have now with all the job opportunities and they didn't have to work like at all back then. They just worked on their own land. They planted their own crops. They washed their clothes in the river or wherever. The mom usually made the food. The husband would go out and hunt and bring the food to her to make. They worked together their whole lives back then. That is gone. There is no such thing as that. So you have to make an extra effort to work together, to grow together, to be an us. There's not enough us's out there anymore. And it's really sad. And so we really probably almost forget about that sometimes. The people that we are working with within the networking that we do, we forget about that sometimes, that maybe both those spouses are going off in different directions and they need some guidance as to how to grow more together. And that's probably what you two are doing, completely what you're doing.
That's why we need the men's side. I'm serious. That's a big part of why I want to add, the men's side to what we're doing. Absolutely.
Oh, no, absolutely. Because I think, Bobby, what you're sharing is very powerful. And it's not because you kind of commented a couple of times about you young marrieds. It's not just for young marrieds. I hate to tell you.
Could be anybody, sure.
Age does not automatically mean you're wise. Let's just put it out there, okay?
True.
So you're talking to demographics are all over the place, because sometimes even when we work together, we've seen situations where even the couples working together still don't feel it's still not an us. And so what you're demonstrating, you can't take it for granted that just because you work together, it's an us. So I love what you guys are sharing, and just the maturity, the immature Bobby and the more mature Bobby, right? The one that made the comment about you overshadowing me, and then the mature Bobby one that's saying, "Go do who you are. I'm going to support you." And especially as you're working in business together, because if she's in her strengths and go all in, and you're doing what you do, it's 1 + 1 = 5.
Equals us.
Right? It's not an
I love
average.
that.
It's a multiplication
That's the
factor.
book title.
1 + 1 = us.
I love that.
So I love what you guys are sharing. And, talk to us a bit about how you're, and I know Bobby's going to say it's just because we got mature, but how did you find your sweet spots in working together in business? And what is that right now?
I'll start on that one. I think it's from grinding together and seeing what didn't work. You can't just automatically go there, especially like we're both pretty controlling in our own personalities. Like he thinks his way is great. I think my way is great. And those ways are not the same. And I think the only way to get to where you really can sit in your lane, respectively, is to like argue it out, kind of. I mean, I really think that that's the truth, especially for us as a couple, because of our even though we're different, we have a lot of similarities in just drive and everything. So for us, it was, many, many years working together. And our whole kind of arc is when we had separate careers, then we came into network marketing together, but he had very much success and experience probably for a decade before I started. You would say a decade? So
sure.
He had a lot under his belt before I jumped into this mix. So I had nothing. Everything I learned was from him. So it created this mentor-mentee relationship, which is, my goodness, I think he probably loved that. I didn't have a thought on my own at that point. Everything was, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I was a good mentee for him. But then, when I started to have my own ideas and thoughts, and then we're running side by side in this business together, and our ideas didn't always go together, there would be clashes. And it wasn't, and that, I feel like that's how it has to happen. It's like, you hear the example of, you put two rocks in a jar and you shake them around and eventually start to smooth out the edges. That I don't think there's a shortcut really for that, especially, I mean, probably with different personalities, it happens different, but with, two driver personalities, two entrepreneurs, two people that think that they know the way, that was the way I think that we, and then just mutual respect. Like I respected him from day one because of who he was and everything. But as we grew to see that, like, I'm going to give you a perfect example. I talk about this in RLA and Girl Power Alliance. So I feel like there's always somebody in the house that feels that they know how to load the dishwasher the right way. Like,
we don't know what you're talking about.
They both exploded on that one. There's something going on.
So,
in their house.
like, one of you knows how to do it right. That's all I'm going to say. It's only one of you. And so I happen to, we everything we do is a partnership. So it's not like I do all the housework. Although he does all the cars and yards, I have nothing to do with that. But he helps with everything. So I noticed that the dishwasher was loaded one day, and it was literally so wrong. I've never seen a dishwasher loaded.
So wrong.
So wrong. Like pots are on I'm like.
That was Savannah. That was our daughter.
It was him. Savannah was already gone and moved out. And so I said, babe, you literally loaded this. I have to reload the whole thing. He goes, no, watch. He said, I found this hot water setting. You'll see. Just watch. I was like, okay. Laughing on the inside, knowing these are going to be so gross. We're going to have to scrub them, but I'll prove him wrong. So the dishwasher runs, and when it's done, of course, everything is spark. First, not only was it loaded wrong, let me just expand on it. They were crusty. Everything was crusty and gross and loaded wrong. So it's going to be wrong. And by the way, this was recent. This was fairly recent. A couple days ago. It wasn't that long ago. So he runs it on this hot water setting that, of course, I've never used. And when the dishes came out, they were sparkling clean. And this was, I feel like that is a perfect example of something that I have learned in our marriage, that he's going to do it different than me, even ways that I think are totally wrong, and they're going to come out amazing. Mm-hmm. And I actually love that about the fact that we are different. And I think that's a great example that a lot of people can relate to. But that is a microcosm of everything. Like I like that he does things different. And I can't speak for him, but sometimes his ways are a shortcut. Do you know what I mean? Like if you can just humble yourself enough to allow them to be themselves, and like, what come what may, whether it works or it doesn't work. But that's my answer to that one.
No, that's a great example. It's just like the toilet paper, right? Over or under. Does it really matter? It works the same, right?
I say as long as there's toilet paper, it's all good.
Yeah, because it gets used the same way. It doesn't matter, right? Fortunately, we both like it over, so that settled a lot of the issues.
Oh, nice.
But that's a great example because, and I think answers the question I had last was, how do you deal with differences of opinion in business or just in life in general? And it's really coming to appreciation that a lot of times there's more than one way to do something.
Yes.
And just because it's my way doesn't necessarily mean it always has to be the best way or, whatever. But appreciating each other's differences is so you had made a comment about no shortcuts. And it's true that you have to go through the conflict because conflicts are healthy. It's just dealing with differences of opinion. Now, being able to do it while not killing each other, that's the thing we got to deal with, right? So I would say the only shortcut there could be is what you guys are sharing. And for people listening to what you guys have dealt with, how you've learned to deal with each other and their differences, and really learn to appreciate each other for who they are and the gifts that they bring to it, and not dig your heels in that everything has to be my way. So if there's any shortcut, it's just getting to that appreciation, right? That maturity, the pre-Bobby versus the mature Bobby, right? I mean, just that's a great example. If the faster you can get to maturity and just learn to appreciate each other's differences, the faster you can get to really just working well as a team.
Right. I totally agree.
How do I say that?
And sometimes I think we just get upset about the small things, It's like, hey, the dishes are clean, so it's a win-win for both of you, Because I've had the same conversation with Robert before in the past. I'm like, honey, this dishwasher's only half loaded. You could put so much more in.
Or you can't close the door.
So as long as it gets done, that's the main thing, right?
Yeah. So, Bobby and Michelle, this is so great, and thank you, Bobby, for you got to do these things more often. Bobby.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
How good is he? He's amazing.
Yeah, you got something to say. I'm sorry, you got something to say, and especially when you're dealing with couples. I mean, hearing both perspectives is so powerful, and so I want you to kind of leave us with something. As you're talking to these entrepreneur couples out there, what's one additional thing that you can say that you think would really help them out
with business or relationship? Yeah.
Well, I'll go first because mine's going to be short and sweet. Okay. And I just was thinking about this as we got started. You saw these two things right here. I don't know if people are watching this and they see this.
So for those of you just on podcasts, they got a figurine of Superman and Wonder Woman.
Yes, they're little figurine, little dolls, whatever you call these.
Toys.
One of them is Superman. One of them is Wonder Woman. One is obviously a man. The other's a woman. And they are both superheroes in that sense. They were created to be superheroes. And I think that if everybody could just think of that, their spouse, as a superhero and not less than in any way, but made to do something specific for that relationship and for their new family or aging family, whatever it might be, you go a long ways, because there's no way you could think of it any other way than that, because you're going to have lots of little arguments about the dishwasher and the toilet paper roll and all of that stuff for a long time until you figure that one out, that you're both superheroes and you both have great ideas and life is just going to be great.
That was really profound. I really love
Bobby.
that.
Well said.
Yes.
That's going to go.
That was really profound. I think something that I try to teach people that I have learned over the years is, you live with somebody, it's the people you love the most, but they irritate you the most, right? Like all their little things, the sounds that they make, or just something dumb, right? Which is so sad that we're like that, but it's just human nature. And so I tell people that when you start to feel like you're in that, where you're just irritated, because it just happens. Some seasons of your marriage, whether it's brand new or 15, 20 years, some are like bliss and you're just like super attracted to each other and things are just clicking, and some are just not, where you're literally like you're tug of warring and you're both pulling on it's just the way that it is. Life is cyclical and there's circumstances and a lot of things. But if you're in one of those tug of war seasons, what I have found really helps to put just to put my mind back in the right space, so that I'm not even if I don't outwardly say it, I'm not mentally nitpicking, because you just mentally nitpick on all these things, is to is to actually every day write down something that you're thankful for that your spouse did that day, specifically that your spouse did that day. And what happens is when you begin to do that, you begin to develop your appreciation again for this person that you selected to spend your life with. And you realize that even if they're doing little irritating things, look at all the things that they do on a daily basis that you can be thankful and appreciative for. And the way that your brain works, once you begin doing this, instead of having to lay in bed and go back over the whole day and rack your brain thinking hard over one thing to be thankful for, what begins to happen is you have trained your brain to seek out these things because you know you're going to write them down that night. And all day long, you begin to feel this joyous appreciation for your person that can change everything in a matter of literally days in a relationship that is feeling contentious. And it's a powerful, powerful little tool to add into your marriage.
Yeah, because you start looking for those things, right? You're like, okay, I got to come
Brain
up.
is looking for them.
I want to come up with my gratitude, so I better start looking through the day for things. And there are a lot of things. And it's like, it's interesting how when we were dating, nothing bothered us. And as soon as we get married, oh my gosh, you just irritate the heck out of me.
Why do you do that? I've been doing that for 2 years we're dating.
Well, it was cute then, but
Yeah. So
It's the forcing of being an us that's happening once you get married.
yeah.
The day you say I do,
do.
you're now being forced to be an us, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Should be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, Bob and Michelle, thank you so much. This is awesome. And if some of you are thinking, well, how does that relate to business? Well, hopefully you saw the illustrations of how it helped you in business, because one of the challenges especially when you're working together, is just being able to make decisions and be unified in what you do, no matter what happens, whatever the circumstance. And
being able to move forward.
Yeah. So you've definitely demonstrated some great things, and there's some great takeaways. So thank you for saying yes and coming on.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's fun. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And so for you listening, since you're still listening, that means it's impacted you. So which means you need to share this. So share this with another married entrepreneur that will glean from this, and leave a review.
Yeah, subscribe to our podcast, please.
So until next week, God bless you. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and to remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.